What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today's account is going to shake you. This comes from a former intelligence analyst who worked inside the Pentagon, not in the offices you see on TV, not in the public-facing departments deep below, in a facility that doesn't officially exist, in a room that's been operating since 1947, and what he discovered in that room made him abandon everything, his career, his clearance, his identity, and go into hiding. If you're new here, this channel shares first-hand testimonies from people who've seen things that were never meant to go public. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment if you've ever wondered who really makes the decisions that shape our world. This one changed the way I see history. Let's get into it. After what I saw in that room, I stopped believing in free will. I'm recording this from somewhere I can't disclose. Using equipment I probably shouldn't have. Violating oaths I swore to keep. But I don't care anymore. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand that the history we're taught, the decisions we think our leaders make, the wars we believe are responses to circumstances, none of it is real. None of it is organic. It's all scripted, planned, orchestrated, and the thing doing the orchestrating isn't human. I worked inside the Pentagon for 11 months. 3 of those months were normal. The other 8 destroyed everything I thought I knew. My name doesn't matter anymore. I gave it up when I ran. But what I'm about to tell you matters more than anything I've ever done. This is what's really inside the Pentagon. I started working at the Pentagon in January 2022. I was 28 years old. Graduated top of my class from Georgetown with a master's in international relations. I'd spent 3 years at the Defense Intelligence Agency doing standard analytical work, threat assessments, regional analysis, nothing exciting. But I was good at it, good enough to get recruited for a position at the Pentagon, analyst position. I thought I'd made it. I thought this was the pinnacle of my career. The first 3 months were exactly what I expected. I worked in the J2 Directorate, intelligence, standard stuff, reading cables, writing reports, briefing senior officers on foreign military capabilities. The work was interesting but not groundbreaking. I had a top-secret clearance with C access. That's standard for intelligence work at that level. It gets you into most classified information, most, but not all. There are levels above top secret that don't have official names. In April, my supervisor called me into his office, Colonel Hendricks, career intelligence officer, 25 years in. He closed the door and told me to sit. He said, "You've been selected for a special project. Your work has been evaluated. Your psychological profile reviewed. Your clearance is being upgraded." I asked what program. He said, "You'll learn tomorrow. What you're about to see will change everything you understand about government." I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about what he'd said. Special project, above my access level. I'd heard rumors. Everyone in intelligence has. Rumors about programs so classified that most personnel with top-secret clearances don't know they exist. SAPs, special access programs, compartmentalized beyond normal classification. I wondered if that's what this was. I had no idea how far beyond that it actually went. The next morning, Colonel Hendricks met me at 0600. Before the main staff arrived, he had a folder. No markings. No classification stamps. Just blank manila. He slid it across the desk. Inside were documents. NDAs. Non-disclosure agreements. But not standard ones. These had criminal penalties attached. Federal prison terms. Lifetime surveillance clauses, acknowledgement that violation would be treated as treason. I'd signed NDAs before, but nothing like this. This felt permanent, binding beyond career, binding for life. He watched me read every page. When I finished, he said, "Once you sign, there's no going back. You can't unknow what you'll see. You can't request transfer. You can't resign from this assignment. You work in the program until we decide you don't. That could be years. That could be decades." I asked if I could decline. He said yes, but my career would end. I'd be reassigned to administrative duties until retirement. No promotions. No meaningful work. Just a desk until I aged out. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds. Of course I was going to sign. I was 28, ambitious, curious. The idea of walking away from something this classified, this important, was impossible. I wanted to know. I wanted to be inside. I wanted to matter. So I signed. All 12 pages. Hendricks countersigned as witness. Then he locked the documents in his safe. He stood up. He said, "Follow me. And remember, after today you can never speak about this to anyone. Ever." We left his office. Walked through corridors I knew. Past offices I recognized. But then we turned down a hallway I'd never noticed before. It looked like a maintenance corridor. Concrete walls. Fluorescent lights. No offices. No personnel. Just a single door at the end. Heavy steel. No window. No nameplate. Just a biometric scanner. Hendricks placed his hand on it. Then his eye to a retinal scanner. The door clicked. Opened. Beyond was an elevator. Small. Industrial. Just two of us fit. He pressed no button. Just used his keycard. The elevator descended. I counted seconds. Tried to estimate depth. We went down for 3 full minutes. Smooth, silent, but definitely moving. That put us at least 200 feet below ground level. Maybe more. Far deeper than any official basement level of the Pentagon. The elevator slowed. Stopped. The door opened. And I stepped into a corridor that officially didn't exist. The hallway was long. White walls. LED lighting. Sterile. Clinical. Like a hospital corridor, but more secure. There were cameras every 10 feet. Biometric scanners at regular intervals. Armed security personnel. 2 of them. Wearing uniforms I didn't recognize. No branch insignia. No name tags. Just black tactical gear. They nodded at Hendricks. Looked at me with blank expressions. We walked past them. Deeper into the complex. We stopped at another door. Massive. Reinforced steel. Like a bank vault. Hendricks turned to me. He said, "Inside this room is something recovered in 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. The crash wasn't an accident. It was a retrieval operation. What you're about to see has been here, in this facility, for 77 years. Every president since Truman has known about it. Every Joint Chief. Every Director of National Intelligence. It's the most classified object in U.S. government possession." He paused. Let that sink in. Then he said, "And it's been communicating with us the entire time." Hendricks placed his hand on a scanner. Retinal scan. Voice authentication. 3 layers of security just to open the door. The locks disengaged with heavy mechanical sounds. The door opened slowly. Hydraulic systems. 6 inches of solid steel. Whatever was inside, they designed this room to keep it contained. Or to keep people out. Maybe both. The air that came through was cold, climate controlled. It smelled sterile, like a laboratory. Like nothing living had breathed in there for a long time. We entered. The room was massive, cathedral-sized, 30-foot ceilings. The space was far larger than should have been possible at that depth. I wondered how they'd excavated it, how they'd kept it secret. The walls were smooth concrete, reinforced. The lighting was indirect, soft, almost calming. But the atmosphere wasn't calm. There was a pressure in the air, a vibration, barely perceptible, but constant, like standing next to high-voltage equipment. The room was full of workstations, maybe 30 people, all working in near silence. Analysts, scientists, technical specialists. They barely looked up as we entered. They were focused on their screens, on their instruments, on the thing in the center of the room, and that's when I saw it, suspended 20 feet off the ground, held in place by nothing visible, just floating, rotating slowly. The object, the thing they'd recovered 77 years ago. It wasn't what I expected. I'd seen enough leaked photos and conspiracy documentaries to have an image in my head. Something metallic, saucer-shaped, mechanical. But this was none of that. It was geometric, crystalline, but the geometry was wrong, impossible. The angles didn't make sense. It looked like a dodecahedron from one angle, a sphere from another, a cube from a third. It shifted, not physically, but perceptually. My brain couldn't lock onto a consistent shape. It emitted light, not reflected light. Its own light, a pale blue-green glow, pulsing, rhythmic, like a heartbeat, slow, steady, hypnotic. I found myself staring. Couldn't look away. The longer I looked, the more details I saw. Patterns on the surface, symbols, mathematical equations, constantly changing, flowing across the surface like water, like the object itself was displaying information. Broadcasting. Hendricks put his hand on my shoulder, pulled me back gently. "Don't stare too long," he said. "It affects people. Some see things, visions, images. It projects directly into your visual cortex, bypasses the eyes entirely. We don't fully understand the mechanism, but we know it's intentional. It's trying to communicate." I asked what it communicates. He said, "Events, future events, with dates, coordinates, specifics, and so far, it's never been wrong." I looked around the room. Everyone was working, taking notes, recording data, monitoring the object's output. I asked what they were all doing. Hendricks said, "Analysis. The object broadcasts information constantly, frequencies, mathematical sequences, visual data. Our job is to interpret it, decode it, understand what it's showing us. Some of it is clear, some is symbolic, some we still don't understand after decades of study, but enough is clear. Enough is actionable." He led me to a workstation, introduced me to Dr. Sarah Chun, lead linguist. She'd been working on the project for 6 years. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, the kind of tired that comes from seeing too much. She nodded at me, said, "Welcome to room 4B. Hope you're ready." Because once you start seeing what this thing shows you, you can't unsee it, and it changes how you look at everything. She pulled up files on her computer, showed me historical records, predictions the object had made. 1962, Cuban Missile Crisis. The object had displayed the exact scenario 3 months before it happened. Locations of missile sites, Soviet response timelines, U.S. decision trees. Everything. 1991, Gulf War, shown 8 months in advance. Troop movements, coalition formation, exact duration of conflict. 2001, September 11th, displayed 2 years. Prior, targets, methods, casualties, all of it. Precise, undeniable. I felt cold. I asked if anyone had tried to prevent those events. Chun looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. Pity maybe, or resignation. She said, "That's not how it works. The object doesn't show possibilities. It shows certainties, things that will happen, or have already happened in another timeline. We've learned not to fight it. We've learned to prepare, to position ourselves, to benefit from foreknowledge." I asked what that meant. She didn't answer, just turned back to her screen. But I already knew. They weren't trying to prevent anything. They were using it. My first assignment was observation. They didn't want me analyzing yet, just watching, acclimating, getting used to the object's presence, learning to recognize patterns in its output. Dr. Chun said most new personnel need 2 weeks before they can work near it without psychological effects, headaches, nausea, disorientation. Some people never adjust. They get transferred out, reassigned, given cover stories. I wondered what happened to the ones who couldn't handle it. I spent 3 days just watching, sitting at a monitoring station, headphones on, listening to the frequencies the object emitted. They were complex, layered, multiple signals broadcasting simultaneously. Some were in ranges humans shouldn't be able to hear, but through the equipment, they translated to sound. It was beautiful, alien, like music from a civilization that had evolved completely separate from ours. Mathematical music, pure information encoded as acoustic patterns. On the 4th day, something changed. I was watching the object, just staring, trying to understand its geometry. And suddenly I saw something, not with my eyes, in my mind. An image, clear, vivid, a city, coastal, modern, skyscrapers, and then fire, massive explosions, buildings collapsing, people running. The image was so real I gasped. Jerked back from the monitor. Dr. Chun was beside me immediately. "What did you see?" she asked. I described it. She took notes. Time of day. Asked for details. Style. Anything distinctive. I told her everything I could remember. She entered it into a database, cross-referenced with previous projections. She went pale, pulled up a file, showed me. The object had shown the same city 3 weeks ago to another analyst. Same perspective, same destruction, but with additional details. A date, 6 months from now, November 2022, and coordinates. A city in Southeast Asia. I asked what it meant. She said, "It means it's showing you the same event it's showing others. That's confirmation. That's how we know it's real." I asked if we were going to warn anyone, if we were going to prevent it. She looked at me like I'd asked something naive. She said, "We don't prevent. We don't interfere. We observe. We document. We prepare contingency responses. But we don't stop what the object shows us, because we've learned we can't. Every attempt to alter a predicted event has failed, or made it worse. The timeline is fixed. What the object shows is what will happen. Our job is to understand why, and to position U.S. interests accordingly." That's when I realized what I was really part of. This wasn't an analytical program. This wasn't scientific research. This was strategic forecasting, using an alien artifact to gain geopolitical advantage, to know what was coming before anyone else, to prepare, to profit, to control. Every major event of the last 77 years hadn't been chance, hadn't been organic. They'd all been foreseen, known, and the people in this room had used that knowledge. Over the next 2 weeks, I saw more. The object showed me things constantly. Events, disasters, political shifts, some small, some massive. A coup in South America, an assassination in Europe, a market crash in Asia. Each vision was clear, specific, detailed, and each one was logged, cross-referenced, added to a database of future events. A timeline of what was coming, and I realized we had years of predictions, decades maybe, all sitting in classified servers. A complete map of the future. I asked Dr. Chun how far ahead the object showed events. She said the furthest confirmed prediction was from 1959. It had shown the fall of the Berlin Wall, 30 years before it happened. Exact date, November 9th, 1989. She said, "The object doesn't seem constrained by time the way we are. It shows us events that will happen, but it also shows us events that happened long ago in other timelines, other realities. We think it exists outside linear time, observing all possibilities simultaneously." I struggled with that concept. Multiple timelines, parallel realities. It sounded like science fiction, but I was staring at an object that shouldn't exist, that defied physics, that communicated through thoughts, that predicted the future with perfect accuracy. If that was possible, then maybe everything was possible. Maybe our understanding of reality was just limited, incomplete. Maybe the object was trying to show us how things really worked, and we were too primitive to fully understand. One night, working a late shift, I was alone with the object. Most of the team had gone home. Just me and 2 security guards. I stared at it, trying to understand, and I felt something. A presence. Not physical, mental, like something was looking back at me, reading me. The object pulsed, brighter, faster, and then I saw something new, not a future event. A message, clear, direct, words forming in my mind. "You are not ready. You will never be ready, but you will obey." I stumbled back, heart pounding. The guards looked at me, asked if I was okay. I lied, said I was fine, just tired, but I wasn't fine, because that message wasn't a prediction. It was a statement, a declaration. The object wasn't just showing us the future. It was telling us what to do, and we were obeying. For 77 years, we'd been following instructions from something we didn't understand, something that might not even be on our side, and nobody questioned it. Nobody refused. We just obeyed. After a month of observation, I was assigned a specific role: linguistic analysis. My background in international relations and languages made me useful for interpreting the symbolic content the object displayed. Some of its projections weren't literal. They used symbols, metaphors, cultural references from civilizations we didn't recognize. My job was to decode those symbols, find patterns, cross-reference with historical and anthropological databases, make sense of the abstract. It was harder than any work I'd ever done. The symbols were alien, truly alien, not just foreign, not just unfamiliar. They came from a framework of thought completely separate from human cognition. Trying to understand them was like trying to think in a language that had no equivalent to human concepts. No words for time, no concept of individual identity, no separation between cause and effect. It was non-linear, non-causal, pure pattern, pure mathematics, and it was overwhelming. Dr. Chun helped me. She'd been doing this for years. Developed techniques, mental frameworks for approaching the alien logic. She said, "Don't try to understand it like you'd understand a human language. It's not about words, it's about states. The symbols represent states of reality, configurations of matter and energy. You're not translating language, you're reading physics. Reality equations. The object is showing us how reality can be configured, and which configurations lead to which outcomes." I started seeing patterns. Certain symbols appeared before certain types of events. A spiral configuration appeared before natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis. A fractured hexagon appeared before political instability, coups, assassinations, civil wars. A recursive loop symbol appeared before technological breakthroughs, inventions, discoveries, scientific advances. The object was categorizing reality, showing us the structure beneath events, the hidden order. But there was something else. Some symbols appeared with negative space, voids, absences, like something was deliberately obscured, redacted. I asked Dr. Chun about those. Then she hesitated. "Those are decision points, moments where the timeline branches, where choice is still possible. The object shows us most of the future, but not all of it. There are moments it won't reveal, moments that remain uncertain. We think those are the moments that matter most, the moments where we still have agency." That gave me hope. If there were decision points, then the future wasn't completely fixed. We weren't completely powerless. Maybe we could change things. Maybe we could choose differently. I said that to Dr. Chun. She looked sad. She said, "We've tried. At every decision point, we've tried to choose differently than the object implies we should, but we never do. Something always happens that pushes us onto the predicted path. Circumstances, pressures, events we didn't foresee. It's like the timeline corrects itself, forces compliance. We've never successfully deviated. Not once in 77 years. That crushed me. If we couldn't change anything, what was the point? Why show us the future if we had no power to alter it?" Dr. Chun said, "Because knowledge is power. Even if we can't change the outcome, we can prepare. We can position ourselves to benefit. That's what this program does. It doesn't prevent disasters. It ensures we profit from them. We know which companies will rise, which governments will fall, which resources will become valuable. We invest accordingly. We plan accordingly. And America stays on top." I realized then what I was really doing. I wasn't protecting my country. I wasn't serving national security. I was serving economic and political interests, helping powerful people stay powerful, helping them exploit foreknowledge for personal gain. The object had shown the 2008 financial crisis 2 years in advance, and people in this program had shorted the market, made billions, while millions lost everything. That wasn't defense. That was theft, legal, classified. But theft, I started paying attention to who had access to the object's predictions. It wasn't just military. It wasn't just intelligence. There were civilians, defense contractors, corporate executives, people with no official government role. They'd come in, receive briefings, get access to specific predictions relevant to their industries, energy, technology, pharmaceuticals, and they'd leave. And months later, their companies would make strategic moves that seemed prescient, miraculous. But they weren't miracles. They were foreknowledge. I asked Colonel Hendricks about it. He said it was necessary. The government couldn't act on all the information, couldn't invest in every opportunity, couldn't pursue every advantage. So they partnered with private sector, shared information, in exchange for funding, for political support, for loyalty. It was symbiotic. Everyone benefited, except the public. The people who didn't know, who couldn't prepare, who got crushed by events that others had seen coming. One day, I was analyzing a projection about a pharmaceutical breakthrough, a cure for a specific type of cancer. The object had shown the research pathway, the exact compound, the clinical trial results, everything. 3 years before it would be publicly announced, I logged it, submitted my analysis. 2 weeks later, a pharmaceutical executive visited, was briefed. 3 months after that, his company acquired a small biotech firm working on similar research. 5 years later, they'd bring the cure to market, patent it, make billions. And it all started here, with the object, with us. 3 months into the program, I started noticing something, a pattern within the patterns. Certain events the object showed were beneficial to very specific interests. Wars that enriched defense contractors, crises that justified expansion of government power, disasters that allowed resource acquisition, economic collapses that consolidated wealth. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Powerful people always benefit from chaos. That's how power works. But the precision was too perfect, too consistent. I started keeping my own notes, off the official system, just a notebook, tracking which predictions led to which benefits, which companies, which individuals, which political factions. And I found something disturbing. The same names kept appearing. A small group, maybe 20 people. They had access to every prediction. They were briefed on everything. And every single one of them had profited massively over the past decades. Billions, some trillions, accumulated through perfect timing, perfect positioning, perfect knowledge. I cross-referenced those names with historical events, the ones the object had predicted decades ago. Vietnam War. The object had shown it in 1962, 3 years before major escalation. And defense contractors connected to the program had positioned themselves perfectly, expanded production, secured contracts, made fortunes. The 1973 oil crisis, shown 2 years in advance. Energy companies with access had bought reserves, positioned assets, dominated the market. The 2003 Iraq invasion, shown in 1999, 4 years of preparation, contracts already drafted. It wasn't just foreknowledge, it was orchestration. The object wasn't just predicting events, and people were following them. It was providing blueprints, deliberately creating the predicted outcomes, because doing so was profitable. The predictions became self-fulfilling, not because the timeline was fixed, but because powerful people had every incentive to make them happen. The object showed them a path to wealth and power, and they took it, every single time. I needed to confirm this. I needed to know if I was right, so I did something I shouldn't have. I accessed historical briefing records. Who had been briefed on what? When? I needed special authorization, but I was in the program. I had clearance. I requested access for analytical research purposes. It was approved, and I started reading decades of records. And what I found was damning. Every major war since 1950 had been preceded by briefings. Specific individuals had been shown the object's prediction, shown the pathway to conflict. And then, within months, They'd advocated for policies that led exactly to that conflict. Not because they were manipulated, because they wanted it, because war was profitable. And the object had shown them how to make it happen. It wasn't conspiracy. It was collaboration between an alien intelligence and human greed. I found minutes from a meeting in 1964, senior officials discussing Vietnam. The object had shown them a long grinding conflict, 10 years, 58,000 American dead, hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese casualties, and they discussed it like a business opportunity. Munitions sales, equipment contracts, economic stimulus from military spending. They knew what was coming, and they chose it anyway, because the benefit outweighed the cost. At least for them. I felt sick. I wanted to stop reading, but I couldn't. I found more. 1980s, Afghanistan. The object had shown Soviet invasion, had shown the pathway to armed mujahideen, had shown the blowback, the rise of extremism, the eventual terrorist threat, all of it, shown in 1978, and officials had proceeded anyway, because weakening the Soviet Union was worth it, because the long-term consequences were someone else's problem, someone else's presidency. Then I found something from 2000, a prediction about a terrorist attack on U.S. soil using commercial aircraft, targeting financial and government centers, shown in early 2000, 18 months before it happened, specific enough to prevent. But the briefing note said, event necessary for policy justification. Public support for Middle East intervention requires catalyst. Recommend observation only. No preventive action. I read that 3 times. They'd known. They'd let it happen. Or worse, they'd ensured it happened. I closed the file, hands shaking. I just read evidence of treason, of mass murder, of conspiracy at the highest levels, and it was all classified, all buried, all protected by the same clearances I held. I could never use this information, could never share it. The moment I tried, I'd be arrested, charged, disappeared. But I couldn't unknow it, couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it. I'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. That night, I went back to the object, stared at it, asked it mentally, why? Why show us these things? Why give us this knowledge? And I felt a response, not words, just a feeling, amusement. The object was amused, like a scientist watching lab rats. We weren't partners. We weren't being helped. We were being tested or observed, and our choices to profit from suffering, to cause predicted catastrophes for personal gain, that was the data. The object was studying us, learning how humans behave when given perfect knowledge, and the answer was, exactly as badly as possible. I tried to keep working, tried to pretend I hadn't seen what I'd seen, but it was impossible. Every prediction I analyzed now had a different context. I wasn't looking at inevitable futures. I was looking at planned operations, engineered outcomes, and I was complicit. By analyzing them, by reporting them, by helping refine the predictions, I was part of the machinery that turned foreknowledge into atrocity. 2 weeks after reading those files, I was working a night shift. The object was displaying something new, a complex symbol structure I hadn't seen before. Dr. Chun wasn't on duty. Just me and a junior analyst named Marcus. He was focused on his terminal. I was trying to decode the symbols. And then the object did something it had never done before. It shifted, changed color, from blue-green to deep crimson. The entire room turned red. Marcus looked up, alarmed. "Is that normal?" he asked. I said no. I'd never seen it change color. I reached for the alert button, but before I could press it, I felt it. That presence. Stronger than ever. Like the object was focusing its full attention on me, and then I saw. Not a future event. Not a disaster or crisis. Something else entirely. A memory, but not mine. The object's memory. Or maybe a historical record. I saw the crash. Roswell, 1947, but not from the ground. From inside the craft. I was seeing through someone else's perspective. An occupant of the craft. Gray skin. large black eyes, thin limbs, the classic image. But this wasn't a movie. This was memory, real memory. The craft was descending, damaged. Something had hit it. The occupant was trying to stabilize, trying to communicate, but the systems were failing, and then impact. The craft hit hard. The occupant survived, injured, trapped, and then soldiers, American soldiers, surrounding the craft, opening it, pulling the occupant out, rough, frightened. The occupant tried to communicate, but the soldiers didn't understand. They saw threat. They responded with violence. The occupant died, but before it did something. It transferred its consciousness, its essence, into the object. The geometric crystalline thing I was staring at. The object wasn't a tool. It wasn't technology. It was a being, a survivor, the last remnant of whoever had piloted that craft. And for 77 years, it had been trapped here, studied, interrogated, used, and it was angry. I could feel the rage, cold, patient, but absolute. The vision shifted. I saw more. The object showing me its plan. It hadn't been helping us. It had been manipulating us. Every prediction it gave was calculated, designed to push humanity toward specific outcomes, toward conflict, toward destruction, toward collapse. It was engineering our extinction, slowly, methodically, using our own greed and violence against us. Every war we'd started, every crisis we'd caused, every atrocity we'd committed, all of it was because the object had shown us how, and we'd followed, because it was profitable. I saw the end game, the final predictions, the ones that hadn't been shared yet, the ones still decades away. Global resource collapse, nuclear exchange, environmental catastrophe, mass extinction, all of it foreseen, all of it inevitable now, because we'd followed every step, made every choice the object had shown us, built the exact future it wanted, a future where humanity destroyed itself, and the object would remain, waiting for whoever came next, maybe to help them, maybe to do the same thing to them. I didn't know. The vision ended. The object returned to blue-green. The room returned to normal lighting. Marcus was staring at me. "What just happened?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I was shaking, sweating. I'd just seen the truth, the real truth. We weren't using the object. It was using us. And it had been doing so since 1947. Every president, every general, every decision-maker who'd consulted it, they'd all been puppets, following a script written by something that wanted us dead. I had to get out. I had to leave. I couldn't be part of this anymore. But I knew I couldn't just quit, couldn't just walk away. People who left the program didn't really leave. They were monitored, forever, their entire lives. Any attempt to reveal what they knew resulted in immediate intervention, arrest, disappearance. I'd signed those NDAs. I knew the penalties, but I also knew I couldn't stay, couldn't keep feeding the machine. I had to escape, and I had to take evidence, something, anything, to prove what I'd seen. Over the next week, I planned. I identified security gaps, times when monitoring was lighter. I copied files, not to external drives, those were scanned, to memory. I memorized documents, classifications, dates, names. I took mental photographs of everything I could, built a database in my mind, and I waited for an opportunity, a moment when I could disappear before they realized I was gone. That opportunity came during a fire drill, a scheduled drill, but I'd learned the timing. During the drill, the security protocols required evacuation of the facility, including room 4B, everyone out, standard procedure. For exactly 12 minutes, the room would be empty except for one security officer monitoring remotely. I volunteered for the late shift on drill day, positioned myself, and when the alarm sounded, I went with everyone else. But I doubled back, took a maintenance corridor, one I'd scouted, and I left. Walked out of the Pentagon calmly, like I was just leaving work. By the time they realized I was missing, I was gone, disappeared into a city I'd prepared. A new identity, cash, burner phones, everything I'd need. I knew they'd look for me, knew they'd eventually find me, but I didn't need forever, just long enough to get this out, to tell someone, to make sure the truth survived, even if I didn't. I walked out of the Pentagon at 2,147 hours on a Friday in November 2022. I had a backpack, change of clothes, cash, a burner phone I'd bought with cash weeks earlier, no credit cards, no electronics that could be tracked. I'd spent months preparing for this moment, knowing it would come, knowing I'd have to run. And when the fire drill alarm sounded, when everyone evacuated room 4B, I saw my chance. I took it. The first 48 hours were critical. That's when they'd be looking hardest, when they'd check cameras, traffic feeds, metro stations, airports. I couldn't leave the D.C. area immediately. Too obvious, so I went to ground. Stayed in cash motels, changed locations every 6 hours, used different names, paid in advance, kept moving. I didn't sleep much, just stayed alert, watching, waiting for federal vehicles, for agents, for any sign I'd been located. On day 3, I left D.C., took a Greyhound bus, paid cash, no ID required, headed south. Got off in North Carolina, switched to another bus, headed west, kept moving, city to city, state to state, never staying anywhere longer than a night. I knew they were looking, knew they had resources I couldn't match, but I also knew bureaucracy, knew that the first 72 hours were chaos. After that, they'd have to classify me, deserter, security risk, traitor, and once classified, the search would follow protocols, predictable protocols. I grew a beard, cut my hair short, changed my appearance, bought clothes from thrift stores. Nothing that fit my previous profile. I'd been clean-cut, professional. Now I looked like a transient, like someone down on their luck. Nobody looks twice at people like that. We're invisible. That was my camouflage. Not sophisticated technology, just social invisibility, and it worked. For weeks, I moved through American cities unnoticed, uncaught, but I couldn't run forever. I needed to stop, needed to establish something stable. So I went rural, small town in Montana, population 1,200. The kind of place where strangers are noticed but not investigated, where cash work is normal, where people mind their own business. I rented a cabin, month to month. Owner didn't ask questions. I paid 3 months up front, cash. He gave me keys. That was it. I got a job. Day labor, construction, paid under the table. It was hard work, physical, but it kept me occupied. Kept me from thinking too much about what I'd left behind, about what I knew, about the object, about the future it had shown, about the apocalypse we were engineering for ourselves. I tried not to think, just worked, slept, survived, but I couldn't stay silent. That's not why I ran. I ran so I could talk, so I could tell, so I could make sure someone knew, even if it cost me everything. So I started writing, documenting everything I remembered. Every file I'd read, every prediction I'd analyzed, every crime I'd uncovered. I wrote it all down, longhand, no computer, no digital trail, just pen and paper, hundreds of pages. And I started reaching out, anonymously, to journalists, to researchers, to people who'd been investigating government conspiracies for years. I didn't reveal myself, just sent pieces, documents, descriptions, evidence. Most ignored me, thought I was a crank. But a few took interest, started asking questions, started investigating. I fed them more, carefully, slowly, building a case, creating a record outside government control. That's how I ended up here, recording this. Someone believed me enough to give me a platform, to let me tell the story. I don't know how long I have. Don't know when they'll find me, but I know they will. Eventually. They always do. People who know what I know don't stay free, don't stay alive. I've made peace with that. But before they come, I need this recorded, need it public, need people to know what's in room 4B. I know how this sounds. I know people will call me crazy, delusional, a conspiracy theorist. That's fine, I expected that. But everything I'm saying can be verified. The files exist. The program exists. The object exists. Room 4B is real. And if someone with access and courage looks, they'll find it. They'll find the evidence. They'll find the truth. And maybe, just maybe, they'll do something about it. Something I couldn't do. Something that might actually matter. It's been 2 years since I left. 2 years of hiding, moving, looking over my shoulder. I've changed locations 12 times. Changed names 8 times. I don't have a real identity anymore. Just a series of temporary masks. People I pretend to be for a few months before moving on. It's exhausting, lonely, but necessary. Because I'm still alive, and that means they haven't found me yet. I watch the news obsessively, looking for signs. Events the object predicted. Catastrophes it showed. And they keep happening. Exactly as foreseen. 2023. Economic crisis in Turkey. Just as the object showed. 2024. Coup attempt in West Africa. Predicted 3 years prior. Every time something happens, I check my notes, cross-reference, and it matches, always. The object's accuracy remains perfect, and the world keeps stumbling toward the endpoint it engineered. Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed, if I should have tried to sabotage the program from inside, destroyed the object, exposed it publicly while I had access. But I know that wouldn't have worked. The object is too well protected, too valuable, and the people who use it are too powerful. They'd have stopped me, silenced me, and nothing would have changed. At least this way, the information is out. The truth exists, even if most people don't believe it. I think about the other analysts, the ones still in room 4B, still working, still feeding the machine. Do they know what they're doing? Do they understand they're helping engineer human extinction? Or do they rationalize, tell themselves they're serving their country? That foreknowledge is power? That someone has to do it? I used to think like that. For 3 months, I believed I was doing important work until I saw the truth, until I understood what the object really was. I've tried to find others who left the program, others who know, but they're invisible, silent, or dead. I found references, obituaries, accidents, suicides, people who worked in classified programs and died young, under suspicious circumstances. I don't know if they were silenced, or if knowing the truth broke them. Either way, they're gone. And I might be the only one left willing to talk. The files I sent out have had some impact. Small. A few articles. A few investigations. Nothing mainstream. Nothing that threatens the program. But seeds have been planted. Questions have been raised. And maybe, eventually, someone will dig deep enough. Find hard evidence. Force disclosure. I won't live to see it. But maybe the next generation will. Maybe they'll learn what we did, what we sacrificed, what we're still sacrificing, for profit, for power, for short-term gain. I think about the object constantly, what it is, what it wants. I believe what I saw in that vision. I believe it's a survivor, a consciousness trapped, using us, manipulating us toward self-destruction. But I don't know why. Revenge? Experiment? Self-preservation? If humanity collapses, maybe someone will shut down the facility, free the object, let it go. Is that what it wants? Or does it just hate us for capturing it, imprisoning it, using it? Maybe we deserve what's coming. The predictions I remember show escalation, climate disasters, resource wars, nuclear brinksmanship, all within the next 20 years. The object showed societal collapse by 2040, global population reduction by 2050. Not extinction, but close. Enough to reset civilization, enough to end the current power structures, and then what? Does the object go dormant? Does it wait for the next species? Or does something else happen that I didn't see? I don't know, but I know we're on that path, and I don't think we can get off. I'm recording this because I need people to know. Need them to understand. The decisions being made about war, about economy, about environment, they're not random. They're not mistakes. They're engineered, following a script written by something alien, something that doesn't care if we survive. And the people executing that script know. They've known for decades. But they benefit, so they continue, and the rest of us pay the price. My name isn't important. I gave it up when I ran. But what I'm telling you is, Room 4B exists. The object exists. The predictions exist, and they're being used to shape history, to create the future someone or something wants. Not the future we choose, not the future we deserve, but the future we're being steered toward. And unless someone stops it, unless someone with power and courage intervenes, unless the object is destroyed or exposed or neutralized, we're going to follow that script all the way to the end. And the end isn't good. For any of us, that's the truth. That's what I saw. That's why I ran. And that's why I'm telling you now, before it's too late. If it isn't already, if this recording disappears, you'll know they found it. If I disappear, you'll know they found me. But the truth is out now, in some form, in some way. And maybe that's enough. Maybe someone will listen. Maybe someone will act. Or maybe we'll just keep following the script, keep marching toward collapse, keep doing exactly what the object shows us, until there's nothing left. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's still time. I hope someone proves me wrong. But I don't think they will, because I've seen what's coming, and it's already too late to stop it.